The Gloriana Set by ThebeMoon. Read by LMX Mabella. Chapter 43. Playing Defense. Hermione couldn't blame Draco for being a bit surly after their long carriage ride with Hagrid, Trelawney, and 3 Hydras. Hagrid had instructed the Thestrals to walk slowly so as to not jostle the babies. Hermione was seated between Draco and Trelawney, the latter bug-eyed with fright, and it was a toss-up which scared the seer more. The fire-breathing monsters or the former Death Eater. After the 3rd or 4th moan of terror from Trelawney, Draco sighed and slipped an arm around Hermione, which she allowed, reasoning that it would only help his mood, and even if Trelawney noticed, she wouldn't believe it, and if she did believe it, hardly anyone would believe her. Plus, it had been a long day, and it was nice to lean against his luxurious cloak, breathe in that rich cologne, and close her eyes. She felt Draco relax as well, and she was nearly asleep when the carriage stopped at the castle entrance. Draco removed his arm and stepped out, turning to help her down. He even extended a gloved hand to Trelawney, who accepted it tremblingly, and then dashed into the castle, scarves flapping. Hagrid thanked Hermione again and gave Draco a jovial slap before departing with his Hydras. "We need to talk," Hermione said to Draco as they entered the castle. "Privately." "We certainly do." Draco glanced around the entrance hall, furtively rubbing his shoulders. "Why don't we?" "Draco!" called a fluting voice. Astoria, dressed in Quidditch gear, stood by the house hourglass cabinet with her team. The Slytherins crossed the entrance hall towards them, practically in formation, and Hermione could see the diamond choker ringing the round collar of Astoria's jersey. Astoria swayed up to Draco, broom in hand, the team stopping a few feet away. They were certainly well trained. "We have practiced, dear," she cooed. The deer earned a raised eyebrow. "I'll be along presently," Draco said, bored. "We need this practice, Draco." A hint of sharpness crept into Astoria's voice, and she didn't roll his name at all. "We play Hufflepuff on Sunday." Draco smirked. "If we're playing Hufflepuffs, I doubt we need to practice at all." Blue eyes flickered over to Hermione. "Granger! Tired of Theodore already? You two looked cozy enough a few days ago cuddling in his bedroom." Her lips curved. "Half undressed." Hermione was hardly listening. She was stripping off her gloves and estimating Astoria's height. About 5'10", she'd guess, about 5 inches taller than she. Hermione nodded in satisfaction, then focused on Astoria's smug face and Draco's sudden frown. "What?" "Care to repeat yourself, Astoria?" Draco asked. "I'm afraid you'll have to say something more interesting to capture Hermione's attention." Astoria's eyes narrowed. "We have the pitch until 6 o'clock, she snapped, and swept out of the castle's front door, her team trailing behind. "This way," Draco said shortly, dragging off his cloak and heading towards the divination corridor. Hermione followed him to a very familiar alcove behind Everett the Evil. Remarkable tapestry, really. You could swear it was its tentacles were moving slightly. "If you would, please," Draco said, brushing the tapestry aside. Hermione hesitated. "Actually, I'd prefer to—" "I'm well aware you likely know this alcove," Draco said with a slight curl of his lip. "Nevertheless, I'd be grateful if you would see yourself clear to entering it." Hermione blinked up at him. He didn't look angry, but if the former grammar was any indication, something had set him off. She entered the alcove, trying to remember what Astoria had said. She needed to pay better attention to conversations, even when they sounded stupid. Draco followed instantly, dominating the small space. Hermione found herself backed against the stone wall, with the Slytherin blocking the tapestry. A stained glass window in the pointed ceiling captured light from the divination hallway, casting red and white patterns on the floor. Hermione unbuttoned her short coat, feeling suddenly warm. "As gratifying as it is that you had your talk with Theo," Draco was saying, "I'd like to know why you felt the need to have the talk in his bedroom." Hermione was disappointed. That was the exact same sentence structure Theo used when asking about Pred. "Wait, how did Draco—" The disjointed words she'd picked up suddenly fell into place. "Astoria, that bitch!" She sighed. "Because the Hydras were detained in London." Draco raised his eyebrows, silently urging her to continue. "So Hagrid used flubberworms in Monday's Care of Magical Creatures class, and Theo wandered off and got caught by Ernie and was confined to his bedroom. And somehow you became half undressed? Draco said in that soft Slytherin tone. Not me. Theo was half undressed. That didn't seem to help much. Well, his shirt was unbuttoned. Draco, that's it. We were glaring at each other, and Astoria came in and Theo was taunting her. That's all. Draco nodded his acceptance, and Hermione blinked again, surprised. She thought he would take a more convincing, but Theo probably sat around with his shirt unbuttoned all the time, the vain thing, and Draco knew better than anyone how annoying Astoria could be. Very well, Draco said, dismissing any irritation with a wave of a hand. What would you like to talk about? A tiny smirk. This does seem quite private. Hermione rolled her eyes at such high-handedness. Always on his terms. So spoiled. Then she sobered. It's about the Death Eater still at large, she said. Draco stiffened. Tell me. I saw Harry in London, and he said Aurors are very close to capturing a Death Eater cell. Her chest ached a little. Not only was she keeping Theo's activities from Harry, but she was running straight to a former Death Eater with confidential information. Harry would be furious. Draco's eyes were icy. How close? Close. The Death Eaters keep moving, though, Hermione said. Draco, do you know anything that might help Harry? He looked at her, his mouth a thin line of distaste. Either for the Death Eaters or for Harry, or both. No, he said. These death idiots want to kill me, not recruit me. I haven't heard anything. What do you know about Regis Nott? Draco's eyebrows lifted. Regis? He's here. I thought he was in Germany. He sighed. Not much. He was pretty low level. Saw him in a raid once. He looked away. I'd rather not say. His face was bleak now, and Hermione regretted asking. He leaned closer, looking up into his eyes. That part of your life is over, she said. Is it? He asked, trying to smile. Yes, Hermione said. You're here with me, aren't you? Well, so I am. Draco's still gloved fingers touched her jaw, and his lips brushed hers. Hermione tilted her face up, lightly biting his full lower lip, her hands linking around his neck. Draco deepened the kiss, and suddenly it didn't matter where they were. He could be in the Great Hall or Theo's bloody bedroom. All that mattered was Draco's mouth on hers and the feel of warm leather on her skin. Draco's hand left her face to grasp her hips, and his lips moved to her throat, just like that day in the charms classroom. He could almost smell the chalk. That fell back against the stone. Draco set his teeth and tongue against her pulse. He was going to leave a mark. She wanted him to leave a mark. The very thought made her tremble. One hand slid over her tights and under her skirt, practiced and lethal, while the other crept under her shirt, finding bare skin, and somehow his black gloves made it even hotter. Dangerous, somehow, to be trapped against a wall by this dark Slytherin, now growling unintelligible words against her throat. He pressed even closer, one hand tugging at her tights. Hermione moaned loudly, and at the sound, Draco tore himself away with a gasp. His face was flushed, white blonde hair falling over his eyes. Merlin, he panted. I could. Hermione very much wanted him to finish that sentence, but Draco stepped back instead and retrieved his cloak from the floor. I should get to practice, he said, running a hand through his hair. Astoria will go to the headmistress if I'm not there, and I'm trying to stay on McGonagall's good side. Hermione frowned. In her opinion, quality alcove time with Draco was much more important than studying Quidditch, but then Hermione thought almost anything was more important than Quidditch. She was also irritated to see that Draco was once more immaculate, while her shirt was rumpled and her hair lightly standing on end. Good luck winning over McGonagall, he said, tugging ineffectively at her clothes. Oh, I will. I'm an excellent role model, haven't you heard? Batting her hands away, Draco smoothed her shirt and coat in seconds. Unlike a certain Gryffindor siren, he continued, who chokes idiot beaters and then seduces them with her bossy ways. He kissed her lightly. So twisted, Hermione, he murmured. I look forward to it. He gave her a small wink and slipped out of the alcove. Ernie caught her before she'd even left the divination corridor, and Hermione glanced down to make sure her shirt was in order. It was. Draco had even straightened her tie.
Hermione, so glad I found you. The head boy beamed. We're having an emergency prefect meeting tonight about Dumbledore's birthday.
The late headmaster's birthday next week was now a ministry mandate holiday with no classes that day. He looked at Ernie with some regret. Who knew what mad schemes they'd come up with without her? I'm sorry, Hermione said. I'm busy tonight. She hoped she was anyway. Ernie's ear practically drooped in disappointment.
We're planning a big event for Interhouse Unity, he said. We could really use your input.
Hermione was intrigued. Perhaps the prefects could assign a special academic project setting up groups of students from all 4 houses. Educational and unifying. I'll write out some ideas before dinner, she promised, and Ernie was appeased. Left the head boy and scaled staircase after staircase to Gryffindor Tower, stopping occasionally to jot down notes on possible birthday projects. Back in the Gryffindor common room, she nicked a few biscuits off a side table and gulped down a cup of hot chocolate. All she wanted to do was curl up on the sofa by the nice crackling fire and doze until dinner. But some things couldn't wait. Instead, she headed to her bedroom, where she shed her coat and pink purse and dug out the Marauder's map. She still needed to warn Theo about the Death Eaters, and she only hoped he wasn't in his bedroom. He wasn't, thank Godric. Theo was pacing in the 3rd-floor classroom, his tiny footsteps appearing and disappearing. Hermione's face heated at invading his privacy so. Certainly wouldn't want to talk to her, but he had to know. He approached the classroom, finishing a last biscuit to find it locked. Hermione easily dispelled the lock and slipped inside. She immediately wished she hadn't. Theo was now sitting in the teacher's chair with one of his former potions partners straddling his lap, broad hands practically covering her slender back. The couple turned their heads to see Hermione, who immediately clapped her hands over her eyes. I'm sorry, she squeaked. Hey, Merlin, I'm so sorry. She tried to leave the room, hands still over her eyes, and bumped into a desk, knocking it over with a loud crash. Why hadn't she checked the map again before entering? Why did she unlock the door? When would she learn not to charge into a situation like a mad irrumpent? Hermione's feet slid on the stone floor, forcing her to open her eyes or fall down. She groped for a chair back to steady herself, trying not to look, but Theo and the girl were standing now, both justifiably furious as well as fully dressed, thank Godric. I'm sorry, she babbled. I wanted to talk to you, Theo, but it can wait. You knew I was in here? Theo snapped.
You can't have him back,
the girl sneered, obviously a little Astoria in the making. Hermione sniffed. Theo could do so much better. That's enough, Belinda, Theo said coldly.
You said yourself, Theo. You said she was a prize bitch.
Get out, Belinda, Theo said, his face even redder now.
I haven't even...
You're a disgusting little snag, and I was a fool to meet you here. Theo snapped. Get out. You're not looking any better, Theo, Hermione said, crossing her arms. No, what's disgusting? Meeting a girl in an empty classroom, letting her rub all over you, then snarling at her for telling the truth and calling her slag.
See? Bitch,
the little ingrate said. Theo stepped towards the girl, his face mottled with fury, and Belinda squeaked and ran out the door. Hermione's own face was red-hot. I'm sorry for breaking in here, she said, letting her arms fall, but I needed to talk to you. I thought you were alone. The door was locked, Theo said, still furious, and his shirt was untucked and unbuttoned again. I thought you just didn't want to be disturbed, she said in a small voice. Sweet Salazar. He rolled his eyes to the heavens. Yes, I didn't want to be disturbed. That's the purpose of bloody locks. Hermione just nodded, feeling abysmally stupid. Belinda would probably run straight to Draco and tell him that Hermione was in a classroom with an half-undressed Theo, and then she'd have to deal with Draco's icy grammar again. So, what is it, Hermione? Theo sounded suddenly tired, and the line around his mouth looked deeper. What is so important? You have to chase me down and bust through doors to find me. Your uncle, Hermione said. Theo blinked. My uncle? Which uncle? Regis, Hermione said, watching him carefully. Theo's face was now perfectly blank, and she had been around enough Slytherins to know what that meant. Regis Nott has been sighted in Britain, she went on, hands now clasped behind her back, as if she was reciting a lesson. He's been spotted with the Death Eater cell. Theo's face didn't change. "And what could that possibly have to do with me?" he drawled. "That owl you received, was it from—" "That message," Theo said, looming closer, "is my business. You had no right to know about it on Halloween night, and you certainly don't have the right to know anything now." Hermione stiffened. "Theo," she began, "are you going to tell McGonagall?" Theo went on in a soft, dangerous voice. "Are you here to prompt me for information to tell the Aurors, or at least Harry Potter?" "No, Theo," she said. "I'm here to warn you." Theo's eyebrows rose. "Harry advises you not to leave the castle. I'm begging you, Theo, stay here. Don't do anything suspicious. The Aurors would be on you in an instant." Theo's green eyes narrowed. "You told the Aurors about the owl?" Hermione shook her head, and he looked surprised. "And I won't," Hermione said. "But if I find you've left the castle—" "Are you threatening me, Hermione?" "I'm protecting you, you idiot," Hermione snapped. "Or perhaps I'm the idiot for not telling Harry everything. I've lied to my best friend for you." Theo's lip curled. "I don't need your protection. Save your smothering attentions for Draco. He may enjoy being nagged and mothered and ordered around, but I do not." Hermione's cheeks heated, but she refused to show how his words had hurt her. Ron had accused her of the same thing repeatedly over the years. "Does Draco think I'm sorry you feel that way," she said, clenching her fists. She kept her lower lip from trembling through sheer force of will. "I just thought you should know." Theo just looked down at her, his face blank again. She took a deep breath. "You say you want to restore your family name, Theo," she went on, her voice growing stronger. "Well, words won't do it. Pictures in a newspaper won't do it. Only actions will do it. I only ask you to consider those actions." Hermione turned and strode from the room, past the now blurry torchlights in a third-floor corridor. Her pace increased, and she was practically running back to Gryffindor Tower. "Cherry Pops," she told the fat lady, and climbed through the portrait hall, ignoring the exam questions her housemates called out as she passed. She didn't stop until she reached her bedroom and threw herself on her bed. "Price, bitch. Smothering attentions. Ordered around." Hermione burst into tears, blindly clutching Crookshanks, who had jumped on the bed beside her. It wasn't true. It wasn't. She was just tired. It had been a long day, what with the deadly monsters and the Slytherins and news of Death Eaters and all. Hermione didn't go down to dinner. She told Ginny she didn't feel well. No, she didn't want a plate from the kitchens. She was going to bed early. Ginny was headed to a SMART meeting. He really had founded a new study group after dinner and then planned to meet Blaise.
"What should I tell Malfoy?"
Ginny asked, sitting on the bed and stroking Hermione's hair. "I'm fine, just a little tired," Hermione said. "Tell him not to worry, and I'll see him tomorrow."
"You two have a row?" Ginny asked. "Never said Malfoy was right harsh with Hagrid, although I really can't blame him. Hydras, Hermione, really?"
"No, Draco's been lovely." Hermione couldn't help smiling at her. "Please don't let him think I'm angry with him."
"He'll want to talk to you,"
Ginny persisted.
"He probably stormed the tower again."
"I know, I just can't see him tonight."
"Hermione?"
Ginny took both her hands.
"What happened? Was it Astoria?"
Hermione shook her head. "Everything's fine. Please, Ginny. I don't want to talk about it. Here." She handed over her list of Dumbledore's birthday ideas. "This is for Ernie. I've marked down some action items for each idea." Ginny nodded reluctantly and left the room. Hermione changed into her penguin pajamas and crawled into bed, determined to sleep. Everything was always better in the morning, her mother always said. The sun would rise again, and perhaps words said in anger would lose their power in the light of day. To be continued. Next up, Ginny is disappointed. Thank you for listening to this chapter of the Gloriana set by ThebeMoon. If you'd like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on YouTube AO3 or Spotify.